When it comes to battle shonen, fights are a core component to the genre that the writer cannot afford to drop the ball on. While the story and themes a piece of fiction brings up is often seen as the most valuable aspect, especially for me personally, conflict is recognized as the element that can draw in a wide and easy appeal due to how simple it is for anyone to get immersed into the situation that's taking place. It's a visual spectacle that's there to amaze you, either by pure hype or a rush of anxiety, both situations pulling off the role it's desired to, and that's to make you crave more. So as stated, it's something that you can easily appreciate as just a standalone product due to the visuals. However, once you have become fully engaged in the story that these sequence of events take place in, you start to develop a newfound appreciation for the fights because of how it has been crafted in mind with the story and characters surrounding it. This is the exact feeling you get when watching fights unfold in Naruto, as it's something to easily follow with just how amazing it looks, but only when you're fully wrapped in the headspace of the characters is when you truly appreciate the genius that goes behind each piece of conflict, as it's never been about who is the strongest player on the battlefield, but instead who adapts to the situation in the most successful way possible. And granted, Naruto doesn't always use this formula, as there is a small percentage of fights within the series that relied on only the toughest prevailing. However, this is only a small amount of battles, as even during the final arc when the power system was at its all-time highest, it still managed to bring itself back down to characters learning to adapt to the situation they're in, so they can gain that victory that strength alone cannot grant them. So with this being said, let's get into how exactly the fights in Naruto have been carefully constructed to match the story that's taking place. I personally think one of the finest examples of this topic of interest is best shown with the final battle between Sasuke and Itachi. Rather than a repeat situation of having a one-sided beatdown, Sasuke now had years of rigorous training along with a power boost added to his arsenal thanks to Orochimaru. He had finally reached a level he felt was necessary to face his brother once more, as Sasuke knew it wasn't going to be a battle that solely relied on strength, but a battle of illusions, as it's something even Itachi warned Sasuke about in preparation for the fated reunion, to face him only when he possesses the same visual prowess as himself. And that's exactly what this battle is, the most craziest battle of illusions to ever take place within the franchise, as it makes sense that the fight would revolve around this premise due to the Uchihas being represented as the strongest clan. And since both fighters are Uchihas, we get to see a much more interesting back and forth scenario, as it's always keeping you on the edge of your seat to see when the first slip up will occur, especially with how Sasuke manages to retaliate to each attack, as it shows how much he's grown since the last encounter. While we're on the matter of growth, we also get to see clever uses of certain techniques that serve more of a bridge to the connection each character had with each other, as this conflict is more than just a simple fight, but a deathmatch between two family members that used to love one another more than anything in the world. These callbacks are seen through examples such as the barrage of shuriken both unleash, a technique Itachi had perfected back at a young age which Sasuke had always admired, wanting his brother and no one else to teach him this specific move. The fireball jutsu is also a great callback to the heritage of the clan, as the fireball technique is considered as one of the first jutsu the Uchiha learn, while also being recognized as a skill to show your growth into an adult, making this clash of the technique even more important for Sasuke once again to show his development. It's also worth mentioning that there's still great and clever strategies being laid out, as the victor is always the one who manages to plan out the attacks more rather than focusing on damage alone, such as Sasuke dismantling his shuriken into separate pieces to get a surprise attack onto Itachi, to aim in his fire style technique towards the sky in order to raise the air temperature and create a new air current, allowing him to form energy from the clouds to create a new lightning style technique named Kirin. It's just so incredible and amazing to watch with every step this battle takes towards its finale. However, remember when I said this fight is the battle of illusions? What if I told you that not only was the fight focused around illusions, but so was the narrative itself? Upon Sasuke's victory, he discovers that Itachi wasn't the villain he was made out to be. There were other ambitions, other motives, as all of this new information comes crashing down onto Sasuke. This is where he realizes, right from the start on the day of the Uchiha massacre, was truly the day Itachi casted his illusion onto him. Everything Sasuke was led to believe about his older brother up to now was completely wrong, even when it came to believing Itachi was fighting fighting this supposed deathmatch with the intent to kill, when in reality he was just holding back. For years, Sasuke was trapped in this illusion of the vision he had of his brother, and just like any other spell, he got released from it when the caster had died. This fight really does go to show how carefully and consistently Kishimoto has planned out this sequence of events to not only fit alongside the characters, but to also give more depth and appreciation to the story that it's building upon. Everything about this segment of the story is built upon the theme of getting trapped in an illusion, from small instances such as Orochimaru believing he had finally gotten control over Sasuke's body, to the big revelation of the truth behind Itachi's actions. It's handled perfectly, especially for a build up to a fight that was years in the making, as we knew this clash was going to be great, but in the end it turned out to be a much better result than ever imagined. We can't possibly talk about how battles are crafted with said character in mind without mentioning the best strategists to enter conflicts. Shikamaru's fights are without a doubt the most diverse within Naruto, demonstrating how true it is for strategy to be the key game changer within fights to secure the victory. Shikamaru's first fight within the Chunin exams is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. You see, Shikamaru isn't the strongest shinobi when it comes to the power department. He doesn't have the techniques needed to end the fight in an instant. However, this is something Shikamaru knows. He's aware he's not the strongest, yet that's what makes him so fascinating. Not only does he take into consideration what techniques and tools the enemy has up their arsenal to turn that disadvantage into his blessing, but he also makes sure that the environment surrounding him is on his side at all times. There's a scene the second after he catches his opponent in his shadow possession jutsu, making both of them throw shuriken towards one another, and since both mimic the same movements, it seems like a pointless effort that both will just end up dodging. And while part of that is the case, it was really just an extra step to lead his opponent to knocking themselves out by bashing their head against a wall she was too close to, making Shikamaru's victory so unexpected yet genius. Shikamaru's fights are all about reminding the reader that it's not just an isolated one-on-one match, but how the environment that this battle was taking place in is really just an extra component added to the conflict, as it's not just there for the visual appeal. And this is made a constant trick that Shikamaru continues to use throughout his later fights, such as the battle with Temari, where he purposely takes advantage of the outside of the stadium, casting a shadow down onto the battlefield, to then using the hole Naruto made in an earlier fight to get the surprise attack onto Temari. His fights are laid out in a confident and subtle manner, which makes his character always the point of interest for the viewer whenever he's taking part. While other fights in the series do contain strategy, it was nothing compared to the bar Shikamaru was always raising. There's many other scenarios within the story that shows the care Kishimoto takes in making sure his characters aren't just engaging in a typical standard fight that has no weight or deeper meaning behind it. While these two separate events were the main topic of interest I wanted to discuss, I did also want to give a brief mention to two other characters that also further showcase what I'm talking about. The first being Neji, a character whose abilities really reflect the type of person he becomes represented as at the start of the series. For example, it's really fascinating to realize how Neji's pressure point technique and the way he speaks to people are so similar to one another. Both are used to hit vital spots, while one is being done physically and the other is mentally, both hitting insecure vulnerabilities. I always thought Neji's rotation technique was also a good way to symbolize him shielding away from others' words, letting him become trapped within his own arrogant mindset that he didn't want to budge from. Yet the only one that managed to break through that shield was Naruto, who's also the next character I wanted to briefly mention. It's clear as day and would definitely be an understatement to say Kishimoto took the most opportunities with Naruto's fights to perfectly showcase the type of individual he is. There's always a deeper meaning in how his fights are written, and it's mainly through the use of his shadow clones. This is a technique Naruto is no stranger to using, as it's easily his most used jutsu throughout the story, and yet it really makes sense with it being laid out that way. Naruto was alone since birth, having to defend and care for no one but himself, so having a signature technique where it's just multiple versions of yourself that come to aid you is the perfect power that embodies the character of Naruto, as he's used to relying on himself. To further emphasize how intentional this piece of character writing is, flashing forward to the final battle of the series, Sasuke calls out Naruto for repeatedly using a shadow clone technique, saying how it's always been expressed as a jutsu that's just there to cover up his loneliness. And what's crazy about this is that at this moment, Naruto has forged many bonds that he considers to be part of his family. Yet the shadow clone technique is something that will continue to stick with him, as well as be a jutsu that's identity will always be seen and known as a power relating to Naruto Uzumaki. That time of loneliness will always be a part of him that he will never forget. There's many more examples that I could go on and on about, but for now I think this is a good stopping point. Hopefully I've managed to clearly convey the point across of the intense care that has gone into the preparation of laying out the perfect fights, as it's not something that should ever be rushed into. Of course, as stated before, this isn't something Kishimoto always excels at, especially during the final stretch of the series, but it's a very small section compared to the grand scheme of things, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. Plus, there's no reason why we shouldn't appreciate the large percentage of good rather than only talking about the bad. As fans, it's always important to give credit where credit is due, and hopefully that's exactly what I've done with this video. And if you agree or liked anything regarding what I've talked about during this video, then please give the video a like, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can be notified when I upload my next video. It's for free and it lets me know you're enjoying my content, so if you're at least a slight bit interested, you might as well stick along for the ride. Also, please do feel free to comment below if there's anything you'd like to talk about, as I'll most definitely get back to you since I'm always interested to see what others think. And with this, thank you all so much for watching the video to the very end. Hope you all have a great day and bless.